Hey, I'm Mike. There's a single number that a growing list of the world's biggest financial institutions are now watching more closely than almost anything else: the price of a barrel of oil. And right now, in 2026, that number is doing something that's making chief economists at Moody's, Goldman Sachs, and BlackRock genuinely nervous. If you've heard the word recession thrown around lately and wondered whether it's just noise, this video is going to walk you through exactly why this particular warning is different and what the actual numbers are saying. Here's the problem, stated plainly. Brent crude oil has climbed to around $108 a barrel, driven largely by escalating tensions involving Iran, which the International Energy Agency has described as creating the largest oil supply crisis in history. That's not a small fluctuation. Recession probability on prediction markets has nearly doubled in the span of about a month, moving from roughly 22% to 39.2%. Goldman Sachs has raised its own recession estimate to 30%. Moody's model, run by chief economist Mark Zandi, now places the odds at close to 49%, just 1 percentage point from a coin flip. And Zandi has said plainly that a recession is, in his words, once again a serious threat. Here's why oil specifically matters so much more than people realize. It's not just about what you pay at the gas pump, though that's the part everyone notices first. Higher oil prices ripple outward into nearly everything else in the economy. Diesel and jet fuel prices rise alongside gasoline, which pushes up the cost of shipping virtually every physical product you buy. One specific data point makes this painfully concrete. A key inflation category tracked by the Bureau of Labor Statistics increased 11.1% in a single month, the largest increase of any item they track, driven largely by energy costs. That's inflation compounding on top of already stretched household budgets, and it happens quickly because energy costs sit underneath almost every other price in the economy. Here's the core point. Economists aren't just watching the price of oil in isolation. They're watching for a specific threshold, a number where the pain stops being background noise and starts actively breaking things. Wells Fargo securities analysts have said that oil sustained around $130 a barrel would meaningfully increase recession risk, because at that level, gas prices climb high enough that ordinary Americans genuinely start cutting back on spending, and businesses start cutting back too. Vanguard's own economists warned in a March 2026 report that oil sustained at $125 a barrel for the rest of the year could be enough to trigger a recession in Europe specifically. And Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, has gone further still, warning that oil reaching $150 a barrel could be enough to tip the entire global economy into recession, not just any single country's. So there's a real range here, not just one scary headline number. Somewhere between $125 and $150 a barrel appears to be the zone where multiple major institutions independently believe the damage stops being absorbable. And oil isn't sitting still right now. It's already climbed meaningfully this year, and it's moving in the wrong direction, driven by a geopolitical conflict that shows no clear sign of resolving quickly. But here's what makes this moment genuinely more complicated than a simple oil goes up, recession follows story. Oil isn't acting alone. It's landing on an economy that already had cracks forming before this specific spike began. The US shed 92,000 jobs in a single month, a sharp reversal from the 126,000 jobs added just 1 month earlier, and unemployment climbed to 4.4%. One economist specifically flagged that the most reliable recession signal isn't a slow, gradual rise in unemployment. It's an abrupt, steep increase, which is closer to what this data is starting to show. On top of that, bank lending standards have tightened for both businesses and households, meaning credit is getting harder to access precisely at the moment more people might need it. Equity markets have already reacted. The S&P 500 has dropped more than 6% in a single month, and the Nasdaq has fallen 10% from its recent peak, officially entering correction territory. Valuation metrics that economists watch closely, including the Shiller-Cape ratio and the Buffett indicator, are hovering near record territory, suggesting markets were already priced for a level of perfection that doesn't leave much room for a genuine shock. Not every economist agrees this ends in an actual recession, and it's worth being honest about that instead of only presenting one side. Real GDP expanded at a positive 1.6% annualized rate in the first quarter of 2026, and unemployment, despite the recent jump, has remained relatively close to historically normal levels, around 4.3%. Heavy corporate spending, particularly the enormous wave of AI-related infrastructure investment happening right now, has been cited by several analysts as a genuine source of underlying economic support. One of the reasons prediction market odds, while elevated, haven't spiked all the way towards certainty. One economist specifically named two very different potential triggers worth watching simultaneously: a collapse of that same AI investment bubble, or the ongoing war driving oil prices, saying that either one alone was a real risk, but combined, they compound each other in a way that's harder to absorb than either shock happening on its own. So what does this actually mean for you, practically, and what can you genuinely do with information like this? Here's the honest answer. First, this is not a moment to panic sell investments or make dramatic, emotional financial decisions based on a single headline. Recession probabilities in the 30 to 49% range mean exactly what those numbers say. Meaningfully elevated risk, not certainty. Markets have priced in recession fears before that never fully materialized, and they've also been caught underpricing risks that did. Nobody, including the economists quoted in this video, can tell you with certainty which outcome this becomes. Second, treat this as a genuine signal to revisit your own emergency fund, specifically because of that unemployment data point. If the job market is starting to show the kind of abrupt shift that historically precedes real trouble, having 3 to 6 months of essential expenses set aside stops being generic advice and starts being directly relevant to the specific risk sitting in front of us right now. Third, pay attention to your own household's exposure to energy costs specifically. If gas, heating, or transportation already make up a large share of your monthly budget, you are more directly exposed to this particular risk than someone whose spending is concentrated elsewhere. And it's worth building that awareness into your near-term planning rather than being caught off guard by a bill that's suddenly 15 or 20% higher than expected. Fourth, resist the urge to make big, irreversible financial decisions based purely on recession odds moving from 22% to 39% in a month. Those numbers can move again, in either direction, just as quickly, based on how the underlying conflict driving oil prices actually resolves. Position yourself to be resilient across multiple outcomes rather than betting everything on one specific forecast turning out to be exactly right. So here's the honest summary. Oil prices sitting around $108 a barrel, with serious institutional warnings that $125 to $150 could trigger a genuine global recession, are colliding right now with a labor market that just showed its first real signs of cracking, and markets that were already trading at historically stretched valuations. That's a real, data-backed reason for caution, not manufactured panic, and not something to dismiss either. The honest range of expert opinion places recession odds somewhere between roughly 30 and 49% over the next year, which means the most likely single outcome, technically, is still avoiding one. But those odds are high enough, and moving fast enough, that being prepared costs you nothing, while being caught unprepared could cost you quite a lot. If this gave you a clearer, more honest picture of what's actually happening with oil and the economy right now, let me know in the comments. I want to know if you're already feeling this at the gas pump or in your own budget. Hit like if this was useful, subscribe for more real data-driven breakdowns instead of panic headlines, and share this with someone who needs to actually understand the numbers behind this instead of just the scary headline. This is Mike, signing off.